This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I'm your host, Tim Flattery, and we have a real treat for you today as our Moonlighter played in the major leagues, played for the Minnesota Twins from 1963 to 1967. His name is Dwight Siebler. And if you know your baseball history, you know right in the middle of that run was the 1965 Twins, which made it to the World Series to play against the LA Dodgers. Sandy Koufax and the Dodgers, one of the greatest Twins team of all time, happened in 1965, and Dwight Siebler had a front row seat for those Twins. So Dwight's career stats, he was 4-3 with a 3.45 ERA. He appeared in 48 career major league games. Dwight was kind of one of these guys that was like the fifth starter for the Twins at that time, because if you remember, the Twins had like Mudcat Grant, Jim Cott, Camilo Pascual, Jim Perry, and then you had Dwight Siebler that was right after these guys. So he was constantly going back to the AAA team, back up to the majors to sit in the bullpen, back down to AAA, up to the majors for a spot start. And he never really, found his groove with the Twins, even though he pitched for them for parts of 5 seasons. And the way I got connected with Dwight was his grandson is a guy by the name of Clay Rowe. And Clay Rowe was at Iowa Central Community College when I was there. And if you recognize the name Clay Rowe, it's because he was an All-American basketball player at Iowa Central. I think he's actually in the Hall of Fame there. And so Clay reached out a couple of months back and said, would you have any interest in talking to my grandpa? My grandpa was on the 1965 Twins. And I thought, oh, heck yeah, it'd be so fun to talk to a major leaguer who played in the 1960s. I mean, what a cool time for baseball. It was really like a golden era of baseball, especially after everything that we're going through in sports right now. People can be kind of negative about what's happening with baseball and professional sports right now because it's the constant infighting between the players and the owners and all this other stuff. And what you'll find talking with Dwight is that a lot of that stuff was happening back in the 60s as well. But sometimes we glorify the past a little bit too much. And so it's so fun to get Dwight on the podcast to talk about baseball from 60 years ago or 50 years ago. And I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it a lot. And Dwight is still sharp as a tack. Great to talk baseball with him. Great to talk pitching with him. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode because it's something really unique to what we've done here on the show. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, head over to our website at moonlightgrahamshow.com. Buy yourself a shirt. You can also follow the show wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and we would love it if you left us a 5-star review. You can also follow the podcast on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter, Dwight Siebler. This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com. Well, Dwight, why don't we talk about your career?
I was no superstar in the big leagues, that's for sure, but I made it,
That's right, you made it, but you grew up Columbus, Nebraska, so I got to imagine that's somewhere near Omaha, and I got to understand that you and Bob Gibson were around the same age, and Bob Gibson, of course, is from the Omaha area as well. Did you and Bob Gibson play against each other growing up?
Oh, yeah. He was 1 year older, I went to North High, he went to Tech High, and they're both in Omaha, so we're inner city. You played each other all the time, basketball and baseball.
Did you ever get the best of a guy like Bob Gibson?
Well, he could throw really, really hard, but he was wild, and he couldn't get the ball over the plate when he was in college. I mean, not that he couldn't get it over, but he had a hard time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So actually, every game I pitched against him, I won. I won because I could throw hard. I could throw between 90 and 95 myself, and he could throw a little harder than that even. But I had decent control, so I beat him. I think of the games and talk to my kids that were there, and nobody, and also the catcher on the team, and who was my best friend. And he said, no, he says, Gibson never did beat you. Every time you pitched against Gibson, you beat him, He said, there were close games always, 2-1, 3-2, 1-0, something like that. But then he blossomed better than I did, I think. But I think I really, St. Louis wanted to sign me also. And I didn't go to the tryout, and that was a stupid mistake on my part. The Twins had already offered me a contract, but I hadn't signed it, so I could have went down to St. Louis and had a tryout, and I didn't do it, and wish I would have, because the Twins organization had a lot to be desired as far as bringing their prospects along the way and teaching them things.
Yeah.
They didn't teach you anything hardly. You had to do it all on your own, And even when you got to the big leagues, their coaches were just really meager coaches, except for one. Johnny Sane was there for 1 year, and he taught me more in that 1 year than any coach I've ever had.
Is that Johnny Sane from like Spawn and Sane and Pray for Rain?
Exactly, same guy.
What did Johnny Sane teach you?
He taught me how to throw. I could throw between, over 90 miles an hour. Okay, he taught me how to throw 3 different fastballs. The cutter that Mariano Rivera invented. Well, we threw it back in the 60s. Like I said, Sane taught me that in 1962.
Yeah, I don't know if he invented it, but he sure perfected it.
Oh yeah, exactly. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I had a cutter that's you can still throw 90 miles an hour, and then I had by moving your fingers and moving the ball a little bit to the right, I had a hard sinker that went the other way. So here's picture yourself as a batter, and somebody's throwing at you 90 miles an hour plus, right? And the ball's about 10 feet in front of the plate. Now you're getting ready to swing, and you don't know whether it's going to come into your left knee, or if it's going to go to the outside corner, or if it's going to go straight down the middle. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Johnny Sane actually told us when we were with the Twins, and I was a spot starter, and then I did start games, quite a few games, or 5 games in a row, because Cod got hurt, but I'll tell you about that. But anyway, he told us, the guys that could throw 90 and plus, which there was 2 or 3 of us, he told us when we started a game not to throw a curveball until he told us to. Use your 3 fastballs, your 3 kinds of fastballs: cutter, sinker, and straight 4-seamer right down the middle. And I'll be damned, we'd get by in the big leagues. It would be the 4th and 5th inning before we'd have to even throw a curveball.
And the idea there was you wanted to keep the curveball in your back pocket, so once your fastball started losing some steam later in the game, you still had some other pitches to show the hitters?
Well, yeah. You come into the 5th inning or so, and you got a man on second and third and 1 out, and they haven't even seen your changeup or your curveball.
Dwight, you mentioned signing with the Twins and potentially going down for a tryout in St. Louis. But after high school, you went on to Nebraska. So when was it that you signed with the Twins? Or did you get drafted? Or how did all that work back in like the late 50s, early 60s?
They didn't have a draft.
Okay.
They had scouts. Actually, I signed with Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. And what year was that?
That was 59. And he come to every one of my games. And during the summer, I was playing semi-pro ball for a little town in Nebraska here. They were paying me, and he was at every one of those games too. So he saw me pitch a lot of games, and then he approached me and offered me. And back then, this is 59, $20,000 bonus.
Wow.
And then a Class A contract. No, Major League contract, with the option of sending me to Class A. And the money per month wasn't much then, $400 a month. But back then, minimum wage was $1, you know.
Right.
So it was livable. Anyway, that's how I got started. My first 4 years in minor leagues, I pitched 420 innings, right around there, and I struck out 450.
Oh, wow.
That was my first 3 years in the minors. That's Class C, Class A, and Triple A.
Do you remember your call up to the big leagues then?
Yeah. I hurt my arm actually in that third year with Buffalo, New York. That was in August, so I didn't pitch the rest of that year. And the next year, actually, I went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and Philadelphia thought I was done because my fastball wasn't there. It's just I lost 4 or 5 miles off my fastball. My arm didn't hurt, but it just I don't know what it was. But anyway, I had a big league contract optioned. The closer got hurt, and so they had to get another one. You remember a guy called Ryan Duran?
I don't remember him. No.
Yeah. Anyway, he threw about 100, I think. I mean, he was really, really a buzzer. Anyway, he was available, so they bought him, took my contract away, and sold me to Arkansas. And they'd use my contract for Ryan Duran. Well, when they did that, the rules at that time were then I was up for option at the end of the year, and anybody could buy me for $25,000. I mean, they could pay more, but they had to pay at least $25,000. Okay. This is 1963. Anyway, the coach that was at Little Rock, Arkansas, his name was Frank Lucchese, and he coached in the big leagues later on in Philadelphia and so on and so forth. He was my coach in A-ball, and I led the league with a 2.22 ER earned run average that year and pitching for him. And, of course, he remembered that. He was watching me, and he said, "You're just not throwing like you were, are you?" And I says, "No." And he knew the story that I hurt my arm. And he said, "Does it hurt?" I says, "No, it doesn't hurt." He says, "I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a lot of work. I think it'll come back." And he says, "We're going to do it in a way that it's going to be nice." And he says, "Every doubleheader we have, which we had one a week, I'm going to start you as long as you can, and then I'll just take you out when you start getting hit." Well, I started getting a little better and better. My fastball started coming back, and I won 7 games in a row. And that's when the Twins stepped in and bought me for $50,000 instead of 25. They offered Little Rock 50, and Little Rock took it.
What was your first day in the big leagues like?
Well, it was, of course, naturally I was nervous and all this kind of stuff, and we're in Washington playing Washington Senators, and didn't know anybody. I only knew one guy on the team, and I'd played with him a little bit, so it was kind of nerve-wracking. But anyway, I got into the game. Cott was pitching, and he started getting beat up in about the third inning, so I went in, and first guy up was Don Zimmer. You remember Don Zimmer?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Bases loaded, and I hit him right in the middle of the back. Next guy gets a single. I finally got out of the inning, but by the time I got out, all 3 of the runs that were on base had scored, So I did, and then he took me out for, I happened to be coming up to bat, and we batted at that time. He took me out for a pinch hitter. So that was my debut, and I'm going, oh, my God. So I was really down in the dumps. Well, it rained the next day, so now I'm at the hotel, not knowing anybody, just ruined my debut in the major leagues, wandering around all day long, just feeling like crap. Well, I went to dinner in the hotel, and I was walking out, and the manager come up to me and says, "We got doubleheader tomorrow, and you're starting the second game." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Okay." So I started, and I pitched a 3-hitter and went 9 innings.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't my debut, but that was my first start in the big leagues.
Oh, what a great way to start. I know the debut wasn't the best, plunking Don Zimmer, but at least you got a good outing under your belt right away.
I did. And then Cott hurt his arm a little bit, and so they didn't want to pitch him anymore that year because this was late August already. And so they put me in the rotation. Mm-hmm. And I pitched. I started 5 games. I went 9 innings, 4 of them.
Wow.
So that was my debut with the Twins. I ended up leading the team in earned run average, but I didn't pitch that much, just half August and September. My biggest claim to fame right now is the Sporting News. You remember that magazine?
Yeah, of course.
They had every issue had every pitcher in the American League and every pitcher in the National League, and it had all their statistics. And it had ERA, how many hits you give up, what your record was, and everything, everybody. And middle of August, I buy the Sporting News after I had pitched those games that I was just telling you about. And I look at that. I'm looking for my name in that big list, and I was leading the American League in ERA.
That's pretty cool. Those Twins teams were famous, though. I mean, you're talking about kind of that 63, 64, but then 1965, is really the greatest Twins team in history prior to the World Series championships in 87 and 91. I mean, you had guys like Harmon Killebrew and Bob Allison and Zoilo Versalles and Cesar Tovar, Mudcat Grant, Jim Perry, Jim Cott. I mean, those are some – Tony Oliva was another guy. So some really great teams.
Yeah.
What was it like to walk into that locker room, especially in 65, where you guys win 102 games? What was that team like?
Oh, yeah, we led the league in home runs, too, And Killebrew was one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He was very humble. He could hit 4 home runs in one game, and after the game in the locker room, you wouldn't even know he played. Wow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just that kind of a guy. So I got to be pretty good friends with him, and on the road we'd eat dinner together and stuff like that. Him and me just fit each other. We didn't go drinking and chasing skirts every night, And
right.
So he was. I shouldn't say my best friend in baseball, but he was. I liked him a lot, and he moved to Arizona, and I have a son living in Arizona, David, and so I called him a few times when I was there, and we talked always. And then he died not too many years ago of throat cancer.
That 65 team, though, you guys end up going to the World Series and playing the Dodgers, but you didn't make the World Series roster. What was it like for your team to be going to the World Series, but you being left off the roster?
Well, that was my biggest disappointment in baseball, period, bar none. I was pitching sparingly. I started out in Denver, and I just was killing them in Denver, and so they called me up in like June. So I was up there June, July, August, September. But anyway, rolling along. I'm just pitching very sparingly because we had a great team and we had great pitchers. It was hard to break into the lineup, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So I was pitching once in a while, not very often, and I was doing okay. I got the guys out, but it wasn't evidently looking good enough that he wanted to start me, but he already had 5 starters, like you just named them off, and Mudcat Grant and Cott and Perry and I mean, geez.
Yeah, they're legends.
Yeah. And so, make a long story short, on that, the coach, when you're going for the pennant, they usually don't pitch you for a while,
Right.
If you go out and blow a game or something like that. So it was tough, but it was just a hard situation. I'd have been a whole lot better off going if I would have stayed with Philadelphia because they were the last division team, and they probably would have put me in the lineup.
So with that 65 team then, Dwight, when they're in the World Series, are you traveling with the team? Are you watching the games from the stands?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I'm with the team the whole time. Okay, Harmon Killebrew, Boog Powell, you remember him?
Oh yeah, big first baseman.
From Baltimore. He runs into and dislocated Harmon's arm, and that was the first part of August. So they put him on a 15-day disabled list. They said he'd be fine. They put it back in the spot and so on and so forth. Well, 15 days come up August 15th, and he's not ready yet. And we had a 10-game lead. We were 10 games ahead, and there's no playoffs. And you win the series. You win your league, and you were in the
you go to the World Series. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So anyway, we had a 10-game lead when Killebrew got hurt. Well, Don Mincher, he comes in and takes Killebrew's place, and we don't even miss a hitch. I mean, we still had a 10-game lead. Sam Mealy, the manager, and Griffin evidently got together and they panicked, and they said, "God, we got to have a right-handed hitter. We don't have a strong right-handed hitter right now because we thought Killebrew was going to be back." So in AAA, in fact, my best friend, and I roomed with him all the time in AAA and also in the big leagues, Andy Costco, he was going for the Triple Crown in AAA, okay? Mm-hmm. He's just hitting the shit out of the ball, just banging it all over the place. So they went down, this is the Twins for you. Okay, how many times does a guy get a chance to win the Triple Crown?
Almost never. Almost
never. They go down and take him out of that league, so now he's disqualified. For some reason or the other, at that time you had to be there at the end of the season. You couldn't be gone, Mm-hmm. So anyway, he loses his chance at being a Triple Crown player. Okay, so they bring him up to take Killebrew's place, and they need a contract, right? Well, I was the last guy they had called up, and they sent me to Denver. Wow. And at the time, I didn't know any better. Mealy told me, he said, "We'll call you back on September 1st, because if you know, the rules are you have a 24-man roster, but on September 1st, you can increase that to 40. Well, sure enough, they did. I went down to Denver and pitched a couple games and come back on September 1st and then didn't pitch much the rest of the year, but just a little bit here and there. Well, comes time, then we win the World Series, of course, and everything, and I'm all happy and all this. I think I'm going to go to the World Series, play the Dodgers. I'm on the team. I mean, I'm on the team. I'm suiting up every day and pitching and everything. And they come to me and says, "Well, sorry, you're not eligible for the World Series because you weren't here August 31st.
Wow.
They said, because that's the rules. And they said, we went to the commissioner and tried to get special, consideration, and he wouldn't do it. He said, no, if they're not there on the team August 31st, they don't play. They can't suit up and play in the World Series. So, Christ, I'm really disappointed. But guess what? Guess who's eligible for the World Series? Andy Costco.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he only plays September and about 8 games in August, But he's eligible. Wow. So he gets the ring, and he gets all the other stuff. And I was so mad. I could have spit fire. And but see, that's why I say the Twins had a poor organization with their players. He shouldn't have done that to me. Number one, they shouldn't have robbed Costco the chance of being a Triple Crown hitter. Yep. And anyway, that's kind of the way they operated all along. But anyway, I went up to Griffin's office and told him how disappointed I was. He says, "Well, you can come to the World Series, but you can't suit up. You can sit on the bench, but you'll have to be in street clothes." And I don't know, it just rubbed me horribly wrong. And I told him, I said, "I'll tell you what, I want you to trade me this fall. I'd rather be with another team, and I'm not going to the World Series," which was stupid, but I didn't go. Mm-hmm. I didn't go. I watched it on TV. I could have been there in L.A. and sitting on the bench and at home, with the sitting in the street clothes. But I don't know. It just rubbed me so wrong that I just hated it. So he calls me in about November and said, well, we had our meeting with our team, with all the coaches and me and Mr. Griffin, and we want you to be a Minnesota Twin. We don't want to sell you to anybody. I says, well, play me or pay me. One of the two. You got to do something.
Right.
You can't let me just rot here, because after that stint I had in August, where I pitched 5 games and went 9 innings 3 times and had a 2.78 ERA, the next year they didn't pitch me hardly at all. I said, well, and we were like a racehorse then. We couldn't. There's no free agency, so we couldn't do anything about it.
Right. They kind of owned you.
It was either quit or stay with the team, because they would not release you, so you could go play for another team. So that's what they did.
Dwight, when you're watching the 65 World Series on TV from home, and you're pretty upset at the team and at management at that point, are you still cheering for the team, or what was that like?
Yeah, I'm cheering for the team because of the players.
Right.
The players didn't have anything to do with all this crap. They give me a full share of the World Series money, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're out there all year, they vote on the people, and they voted to give me a full share. So that was nice. And then Jim Cobb and Mudcan Grant the next spring, I was out in spring training, and they come over to me one day and says, "Steve, you got screwed big time. We all know that. And we're going to the commissioner tomorrow. He's going to be here in Florida." So anyway, they said, "We're going to go and try to get you a ring." Next day they come back and says, "He won't budge."
Wow.
He won't budge. He said, "You weren't there August 31st. You're not getting a ring." Now, see, if the union would have been in on it, might have been a different story. But we didn't have a union then. We had no union. So we had no representation except for players. Well, it's pretty hard for a player to demand things against the owner that's writing his check. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, exactly.
And then getting back to that year I had where I had 2.78 ERA, everything in the Minnesota papers were Minnesota has found their 4th starter. So next year, Siebler will be number 4 starter, and Perry and Mudcat Grant and can't remember who the other one was now. But anyway, I think Dean Chance. I think they bought Dean Chance at that time too. So I was going to be the 4th starter, and so we go down to spring training, and this is what I mean by the Twins again, how they handled things and how they were. We had a pitching coach that during the time I was up there in August, that whole time, he talked to me once.
One time? That's it?
One time he talked to me and just said something like, "Oh, how you doing, Dwight? And and how's some nice day today?" And all. That was it.
Wow.
That's the pitching coach. I never saw him work with anybody the whole time I was there. Not one time. He was Mealy's drinking buddy, is what he was. Mm-hmm. That's what he was, and that's what he was there for. Well, in the spring, then after that, my 5 starts with that good ERA and everything looked great. I did lose. Remember, I told you I hurt my arm.
Yeah.
I did lose about 3 miles off my fastball.
Yep.
Which really hurt. Well, I did. I tried with all my heart, but I just could not get back in form. I just couldn't do it. My fastball was slower. My hard curve wasn't as good. I had every once in a while it would be there, but not consistently. Then Griffin calls me and says, "I'm married and had 2 kids at this time. Okay, two little girls." And Griffin calls me at the end of a week before the season ended, and said, "We want you to go to Venezuela and pitch winter ball. That way you'll be ready for the spring, and you can get over this hitch, that you're in." Mm-hmm. And I says, "Okay." I said, "All right." And I says, "Well, what?" I says, I got a family, and I've got residence in Omaha, and my wife's got to live there with the 2 kids, and then I got to live in Venezuela." And you know what he said? He says, "We'll give you $1,000 a month." I said, "What? $1,000 a month?" I says, my wife will need that just to take care of her and the two girls. And I said, so where am I going to get the money? You know, you haven't paid me enough that I save anything. Where am I going to get the money to live in Venezuela? And he said, well, that's about the best we can do. And I said, well, I'm not going then, you know. So I didn't go, and that was probably a big mistake on my part. I should have borrowed the money or did something to go, but I didn't. I'm a little bullheaded once in a while, so I was pissed off at him anyway, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And then the next spring I went to spring, and that was 65. Yeah, that would have been 65 then. And they sent me to Denver, and that's when I finally got back into rhythm and was doing good. So then I call my friend that works in the office that I played AAA ball with. He's from Minnesota, Jim Rawlings. We were good friends. And anyway, I asked him, I just was talking to him, and I says, has anybody's interested in me at all? He said, oh, yeah. There's been several teams that wanted to buy you, and Griffin won't sell you. I says, you're kidding me. He says, no. He just tells them you're not available.
That's got to sting a little bit.
Well, sure it does. You know, I'm 29 years old now, or 28. You know, when you're 30 back then, you were done as a pitcher, you know.
So you do have to be kind of grateful that you played at such a fun time in Major League Baseball. I mean, this was kind of the golden era of baseball, the 50s and 60s there. And, you know, you played against, like, you know, the Mickey Mantles of the world and the Carl Yastrzemskis. What do you remember about facing, Mickey Mantle?
Well, Mantle and Maris, I pitched against both of those guys a few times. And Mantle was very hard to pitch to because he wasn't zeroed in on one particular pitch. He could hit anything. So you had to just keep it down and give him real good stuff and hope things were made out. And I don't think I give up a hit on him. And one time in Yankee Stadium, I had 2-2 on him, and I got the outside corner perfect for a strike, and they called it a ball because no umpire calls Mickey Mantle out in New York. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It just wasn't going to happen, and so the next pitch. Now it's 3-2. I come in a little more, and he hit a one hopper to third base, and this one hopper hit fairly hard. But a regular third baseman would have been a piece of cake. Hits his glove, and he drops it and picks it. By the time he gets to first, of course, Mantle runs like hell. He's already there, you know. So they give him a hit, you know.
Well, it's Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I know. I got him striked out, and then they give him a hit. So, and the other times I got him on a fly ball. I remember. So I did well with him, and I did well with Maris because Maris was a fastball hitter, period. You know, he was way off on his swing when you threw him anything slow, and I had that screwball changeup, so I pretty much had command of him. You know what I mean? He didn't know when I was going to throw it, and I threw it at different times. Had real good luck with Maris. You know. And then Yastrzemski.
Yeah, how'd that screwball changeup work against Yastrzemski?
Nothing worked against Yastrzemski. Put it that way. Yeah, this is the book on Yastrzemski. Before each game or each series, we would have a meeting with all the pitchers, catchers, in fact, the whole team, and so on. So we all got together, and when it come to Yastrzemski, and Jim Cott was the guy that was going through it all. He was real comical type guy, and just kept everybody loose, and just really, I don't know, just a great guy. And he's probably turned out to be my second best friend other than Andy Costco. And I talk to him every now and then. If he comes through Omaha, he'll call me from the airport all the time, you know, and stuff
cool.
like that. You know. But anyway, come to Yastrzemski, and he said, all right, for you guys that don't know, you give him your best stuff and keep it low and hope you don't kill any infielders. That was the book on Yastrzemski.
That's pretty good. Yeah, not a lot of people got Yastrzemski out in Fenway Park.
Well, he swung so hard that he come unscrewed. Amazing how he could swing that hard and still make great contact. I had him 2-2 with a man on second. I was about the seventh inning or so. I think I was trying to be the setup man for the closer, and I pitched one inning before that, and I did okay. Batty calls for a fastball. I thought, no, there's no way I can throw in a fastball. I don't care if I just one of the cutter or the other one, he'll crucify it. So I shook it off and threw a curveball. Well, what I did with curveball, I had that hard curve, like I was telling, that they call a slider now, and it come down and landed. It would have landed right below the knees on the outside corner. Perfect pitch, you know. How could you throw it any better, you know?
Right.
I mean, if I had to draw it, that's exactly what I wanted to do, and I did. He hits a line drive off the green monster. He waited that long. He had, I think, one bounce to the big monster, you know. But he was just a great best. He's the best hitter I've ever seen, I think, you know. But, well, Tony Oliva was damn good too, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. Tony Oliva should be in the Hall of Fame.
I'm almost sure he is. You might look that up later, but you know who should be in the Hall of Fame, and I know it's not, is Jim Cott.
Yeah, Jim Cott needs to be in the Hall of Fame too. He won like 15 Gold Gloves.
24 years in the big leagues as a pitcher.
Unbelievable.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
250-some wins.
He's so good on TV, too. I love Jim Cott when he's doing the color commentary on TV.
Yeah.
Well, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions, okay? And so these are a little more rapid-fire questions, but who is your all-time favorite teammate?
Andy Costco.
Even though Andy Costco, you guys have an interesting relationship, it's interesting that he was your favorite.
We roomed together all the time before that incident, and we were just really good friends, you know.
All right, second question is, what's one memory from your career that you have that reminds you of everything that you love about the game?
Well, I think my debut in Washington, I told you about that, hitting Zimmer in the middle of the back.
Oh, yeah.
And putting a little kerosene on the fire when I went in there, you know, and feeling like crap. And I come out, get on the bus, and sit down by myself because I don't really know anybody. Guess who comes and sits next to me? Killebrew.
And you mentioned Killebrew is one of your favorite guys. Did you stay in touch with him through the years?
Yeah, I did, because he was in Arizona, and my son David lives in Arizona.
Oh, that's right. You said that, yeah.
Yeah. So I did keep in touch with him. But he come and sat with me, didn't mention anything about the game, just started talking about different things, you know, and it really made a big difference for me, you know.
Yeah.
They always said, how did you get so strong? When did you lift weights to become this strong of a person? I'm not kidding you, Tim. I seen him check his swing and hit the ball 260 feet. I'm not kidding you. I mean, the guy was just unbelievable strong. But anyway, he said, well, I never lifted weights. My dad had delivered milk. And remember those big silver containers that were full of milk?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen them.
Well, you know how damn heavy they are full of milk. He said, I started helping him deliver those every day from my sophomore year in high school until I graduated.
And that's how the killer got so strong.
He said, that's what did it. He said, when I first started, I could hardly lift one. By the time I was a senior, I was just picking them up like nothing and carrying them, you know.
Dwight, who's the best pitcher you ever saw?
Colfax.
Yeah, I got to imagine that was tough watching that Game 7 of the World Series.
Well, yeah, and more so than most people know, that was his third game.
Yeah, and he didn't even pitch Game 1 because of Yom Kippur.
Yeah, and he still pitched 3 games.
I know, it's amazing.
And he come back that last game, and we got Minnesota Twins. We're going to beat the crap out of him. He's got to be tired, and he throws 75% fastballs, you know. I mean, he had a great curveball, but he didn't have to throw it that much, you know, because of his great fastball. So I thought, everybody's thinking we're going to crush him. I think he pitches a 3-hitter.
Wow.
Gives us 1 run. quit just a couple years later after that.
Yeah, he retired early.
Because he had arthritis in his elbow. And that didn't develop overnight, so that game, in that 65 series, when he pitched 3 games with very little rest in between all of them, his arthritis was there too, and he just overcome it somehow. I don't know, but he was quite a pitcher. His curveball was definitely 12-6. I'll tell you that.
What are you most proud of, Dwight?
I think in baseball is that August I told you about, plus leading the league in the American League in earned run average, but that was kind of not a farce. But I mean, I didn't have very many innings compared to the rest of the guys that were in the league all year or so, but it was still counted. I had enough innings. I had enough innings, evidently, that they put me there. Otherwise, they wouldn't put me in there. But
what's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Best advice, again, Jim Cott. Okay, we get to the big leagues. We're sitting in the bullpen and just chit-chatting, and Cott was down there too, because anybody that started, if they weren't going to start for a couple of days, they could go down to the bullpen or sit on the bench, whatever they wanted to do, So anyway, he told me, he says, I'll tell you what, Sieb, he says, this is the best advice I can give anybody, and it's true. He says, never throw a strike. And I said, what? I said, what do you mean? I never throw a strike. Throw everything that looks like a strike, and by the time it gets to the plate, it's maybe on the inside or the outside, off the corner, maybe 3 inches or 4.
That's pretty good.
And that was where those 3 pitches come in.
Yep.
You throw the cutter on the outside to a right-hander, look just like a fastball, and all of a sudden it's outside. You throw a sinker, it looks like a perfect ball they crush over the third baseman's head, and all of a sudden it's down by your knees and you're hitting a grounder, or you're hitting a ball straight down in the dirt, And that's what he said. Don't ever throw a strike. And I know at first I thought, oh, what is he talking about? But I caught on after a while, and that's the best thing to do is don't ever throw a strike.
That's great advice for any pitcher then, right? I mean, Jim Cott knew what he was talking about. So.
Oh yeah. He really knew what he was talking about, yeah.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.